If you haven't seen it yet, this is an idea for a brand new IFender crafting recipe. It's the Minecraft version of the shot heard around the world, racking up millions of views in just a couple of days, and even a response from a Minecraft developer if Minecraft's IFend recipe was made when the game had just two big mobs, the Blaze and the Enderman. Now that we have some more challenging ones, isn't it time for Mojang to change that recipe? According to this Reddit user, yes. According to the community, well, that's why it went so viral. And so today I'm going to break down the very strong case for changing the IFender recipe, as well as the very big one against it. This is something that has gone so popular, we know Mojang are going to at least consider it, so how will they end up deciding? Let's go into that today, after I remind you to subscribe, by the way, to see more Minecraft videos like this one. We're getting so close to 2 million, and isn't that exciting? But what else is exciting is this meme, which I should break down right now. Bill Wharton posted a simple question on Reddit, wanting to know how people would feel about a change to the IFender, not realizing how big his idea of adding to the existing crafting recipe with a Prismarine shard, an Echo shard, and a Wind charge would become. They said that personally they think it would be cool to be forced to do a lot more before the end fight and getting the Elytra/endgame gear. On the other hand, some people might prefer to get that stuff earlier. This simple suggestion got over 15,000 upvotes on Reddit, and although they don't share impression data, I shared my take on this with Twitter, and that got 1.1 million views by itself, so assuming the original post has far more, and all of the fun posts that have come out of it have even more than that, this has been seen millions of times in just a few days, and a lot of responses were quite serious, saying, well, if we're going that way, why not make the Ender Dragon more difficult to fight, or even just speedrunners would be fucked, lol, although not necessarily true, they play 1.16 anyway. But even more interestingly, we got the actual analysis from people like MacRat saying that Echo Shards would be a horrible idea because they're unrenewable and you don't get that many of them. Also, IFenders are used for crafting Ender chests as well. This confirms you'd have to change the Ender chest recipe as well, and even if you did that, you would still limit the number of end portals you could go into based on the number of deep darks in your world. And so what if you took this suggestion from A1Cron to make it so that you instead use this as the recipe for a deep dark key? It's a bit of a fun idea in my opinion, and it would therefore tie in the deep dark a bit better to this idea. But also there's ideas like this one, my idea on how to craft the Ender Eyes. As you can see, this is very logical and makes just as much sense to some people. And then we've got how about you? Okay, that's a little aggressive. We've got pretty sure I just came up with the perfect ideal recipe for the IFender. As you can see, you'd have to get shulker shells from the end before you could go there, as well as IFenders. Okay, this immediately falls apart, but not as much as my favorite recipe, which is this one right here. It's absolutely perfect, and it needs no notes. But more seriously, it is worth analyzing, given how many people hate this proposed change, what are the benefits and the downsides of changing that recipe? Well, let's start with the benefits. I think the easiest one to see is the one we'll start with, because ultimately, it's clear to everyone that the IFender recipe is outdated. It was added in 2011 when there were just two big mobs for you to fight, and now obviously Minecraft has changed so much, adding new ores, changing the nether, and even changing the number of bosses and hard mobs that exist in the game. There is no end to little fights that you can face if you want to, and as the rest of the world has changed, we had caves and cliffs before, but now they're so much better after the caves and cliffs. We had two types of wood in oak and birch, but then they added jungle, and then they went further and added savannah and dark oak, and now we have pale oak, and even if you look in the distance there, we have some cherry as well. There's some crazy wood types in Minecraft, and so in the same way that we didn't just say we had enough ores or enough blocks or enough redstone contraptions, I think we should say we don't have enough of a value from what is meant to be the hardest fight in the game. It is outdated, and they wouldn't design it that way today, and so the only argument you can say for the current IFender recipe is that it's how the game was made, and it therefore has some heritage to it. But does every piece of heritage need to be perfectly respected by keeping it exactly how it is? Blue wool existed in Minecraft, but yet they added blue terracotta and blue concrete, and personally I prefer this so much more than I like this, despite this being the OG version. Minecraft should consider that something being outdated doesn't necessarily make it good. Something being around for 14 years doesn't necessarily mean it's something that has to stay. And the second argument is one that I would make about sandboxiness. Minecraft is a sandbox, and in the same way that when they updated the Nether, they made this Nether portal, cleverly changing the perception from the average player. It used to be that you had to know someone who would tell you about the Nether portal, or watch a video or read the wiki, but now the game itself hints that you can go there by building one of these. This is really clever, and I think that it adds to the sandboxiness of Minecraft, which they've done themselves by adding so many structures, monuments, deep darks, there are woodland mansions, there are so many challenges that you have to face, but none of those challenges are actually required if you want to go to the end. Because to go to the end, you need blaze rods, which are found from precisely one mob and one source, and then you also are going to need ender pearls, which you can get from 3 places. You can trade, you can trade but in a different currency with some more aggravated dudes, or you can kill some Endermen. That doesn't really feel like a sandbox because it's trade, trade, or kill. Whereas if we look at the process for getting, say, diamonds, you can mine for it yourself, or you can go and find it in a structured chest like the trial chamber or the shipwreck, or you can go to the end city where you'll find pre-enchanted gear, or you can simply trade with a villager who might be lucky and give you the right enchants. This is a really cool part of Minecraft for many people, and it makes it a sandbox. Arguably, if we're going to have a sandbox with so much content in it, doesn't it make sense that some of those ways should lead to IF-enders? Maybe not by having all of the parts required for the recipe, but at the very least, shouldn't we be able to find IF-enders in different places, so that if instead of speccing into a nether fortress and, like an enderman forest, what if instead of speccing into those places, you went into a trial chamber and then you went into an ocean monument? Why is it that you're not rewarded with progress towards the end of the game for those places? It just doesn't make sense, especially when it comes to the current game loop. If we consider that Minecraft is a game that many people do load up a brand new world, play on it for a few hours, then stop. It's something that I used to find crazy, but I'll do occasionally on stream, and if we consider that is the case, well then the current game loop for Minecraft is really short. You kill 2 random arbitrary mobs, you jump into the end, and then shouldn't really the end be harder too, by the way? You kill a dragon, and by the way, she's not the hardest mob to kill in a game, and then the game declares that it is over and you have won. Again, this feels like a weird legacy feature that just kind of holds over now. Why is it that getting to the end and beating Minecraft, air quotes, is easier to do on hardcore than defeating a trial chamber and a deep dark? This is something about Minecraft that I think is going to grow as more and more content is added to the game, and I think that this is the classic case of Minecraft having some old mechanics that just stay old despite the rest of the game growing around them, and that is something that I think obviously needs to change. Or does it? Obviously, as someone who is a natural contrarian, I actually find it much easier to make the case against this, and even though I think that the end does need some changing, especially the way you get there, there is also a big argument against doing precisely that, and the biggest one is inaccessibility. Only 5% of players have been to the end. Do we really want to reduce that number further? Do we want it to be as low as the number of people who have powered a furnace with lava? Don't ask me why it's only 4.6%. And you can see that the number of players who've respawned the Ender Dragon is even lower at about 1% there, and so ultimately you could make a good argument that the End Dragon just isn't a really well used piece of content, and clearly therefore they need to make it be used by more players, not fewer. This is a great one in my opinion, but the second greatest argument is that Fisk, the Minecraft developer I referenced earlier, actually makes himself. He says that pretty controversial, but I see the Deep Dark and things like Trial Chambers as an optional extra challenge for the players who want to seek it out, but it should never be made mandatory for progression. He clarifies at the end though that it's his personal opinion. He's not speaking on behalf of Mojang, but what he is saying is that as a Java engineer, he thinks that actually Minecraft does well with optionality, and ultimately this is the big reason why I think the end could be changed in terms of access, but maybe make it easier. Right now, the Deep Dark and Ocean Monument are meant to be choices that you can go for, but if they became a part of the core game loop, that is to say if you had to go to a Deep Dark just to get an Elytra, then they might feel less fun and surprising and more like a grind as you try to find them. Ultimately, I think this is the challenge, and I think this is why so many people disagree. Some people think that Minecraft needs lots of optionality, and it should all be about what you want to do in a moment, and some people believe that there should be big late game rewards and accomplishments, and I think that the latter camp have been losing the argument quite a bit when it comes to actual end Minecraft updates. So let's look at, for example, the Trial Chambers. These were really great and they're perfect in my opinion, but a lot of people just don't really love them that much because they probably aren't going to go to them because it takes effort to find one and you got to be prepared for it, etc, etc. Whereas Cherrywood, literally you find it when you spawn in, even if it's one tree, but that still means that you have access to a brand new thing in your world on the surface. There are lots of players who just aren't going to dive that deep into things, and so maybe for those players, the argument is not to make the IF-ender crafting recipe harder, but actually to make it far easier. Minecraft has sort of done this with ender pearls. Like I mentioned, it used to be just Enderman, and then it was trading, and now we could argue that some people might do it via the Trial Chambers. What if they made more options for blaze rods in the same way? This has been a big firm rule for Mojang, but ultimately you could make the end easier to access and have some other big final fights Wait, have we come back to the semi-meme of the big end portal key? Yeah, I think we have actually. I think that Minecraft needs to have some big accomplishment for having done a lot of other stuff, and right now the closest you get is silence for going to enough deep dark ancient cities, and you can sort of argue if you build out a purpur, that's a flex, or the elytra is kind of endgame and shulker boxes too, but really none of these features are endgame, and you can set your sights on them and do it within an hour if you really want. And so what if we had a true endgame feeling? One of my favorite personal versions of this is actually, so I recently did collecting all of the trims in survival on a random seed. I didn't know where they were, and it took me very close to 100 days. Don't ask how that ended, by the way. It definitely didn't involve eggs. But what's important to note is the fact that, yeah, that was a really fun challenge because it was actually going for this big collection of things, but rather than just having a collection of trims for the sake of it, or rather than having a collection of rare boss mobs for the sake of it, what if instead there was a place you could actually go? Sure, we can't change the end, but should we change this dimension? Well, let's make one more argument against why we shouldn't change the end. Nostalgia! There are just some things that never need to change, like the recipe for a stone axe and a ladder. If you try to change one of these, take for example diamonds, I mentioned there are many ways to get them now, and that is entirely fine to people, but the moment they change the existing way, the mining lair, they have a whole community of people that are still angry. It's been 5 years, but I still get comments. There's one that came up on Q&A about someone being upset that, wait, they changed the lair for mining diamonds? This is just a truth of Minecraft. There are many people playing Minecraft every day or week or month, and there are many people who get back into it once every year or 2 or 3 because of the Minecraft cycle, and so for those people, betraying them by changing something so drastically without giving them a heads up is very, very hard. How could you change that? Well, Minecraft does give very public update changelogs, but if you're not following the game, you're not going to see them. And although we could tell them all to get a subscription to IBX Toycat, the best source for learning about Minecraft updates and news, ultimately, Minecraft does change enough over the years that it is quite hard to follow, and so that is why nostalgia is not just a feeling, but it's actually a reeling as far as Minecraft development is concerned. Which is where I'm now going to bring this into conclusion, because I think that this is a fun idea, and I think that the reason it broke the internet is because it's one that would cause a lot of backlash. Some players would absolutely love this and find it to be very, very fun, but for many it would be probably a step too far, and so personally I think it'd fit perfectly as like an add-on feature or something. If you wanted to make going to the end feel like a real challenge, this is a great way to do it, but I think we've seen from Minecraft's cancelled combat and redstone changes that rocking the boat just isn't worth it for them as a company. There are many changes that would make the game better, but if the PR is bad and the community sentiment is negative, then they're going to be cautious about adding it. Conversely though, that does mean that when we look at things like the copper golem change, they didn't just added it the simplest way they could have, taken the mob vote guy that would have pressed buttons randomly. Instead, they actually made a very well considered and version of the mob that will likely get many more changes based on feedback. In other words, when they add a new feature, they're willing to do so in a really well considered, delicate, ideal way, but when they're updating old features, they can't just start with a blank slate. They have to acknowledge that how it is how it's going to stay, most likely, and that's why when we look at the Nether update, you can see they touched every part of that dimension besides the fortress, and so seemingly, if you want to beat Minecraft, it'll be the same for a long time to come. Even if we ever do get the much, wanted end update, I think they're going to keep the main end islands and maybe even the end cities the same, whereas it's everything else that will be added on top of those things, and that is something to consider for basically any Minecraft update right now, including this one about copper, because we still don't know what was found below that beach, damn it. Anyway, I hope you found this video to be a useful explanation. I enjoy this format of going for and against big Minecraft changes. We should come up with a series name for that. Let me know it in the comments. And otherwise, I won't be streaming tonight like I was planning to. I had to go to the hospital this morning. I'm still feeling kind of rough. Hopefully, I am better soon. It's my birthday this week. I gotta be ready for that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Goodbye.